The neon lights of the city blurred through rain-soaked windows. My office, a crammed relic of another era, reeks of synthetic whiskey and desperation. The walls hum faintly from the neon sign outside. K. Drayden Pi. Most people who walk through that door aren't looking for justice, they're looking for a secret, buried deep, or a scapegoat to take the fall. She didn't look like either. Corporate slick, with clothes so sharp they practically bled creds. But her eyes darted around the room like she was casing the place. Nervous, dangerous. She dropped a data shard on my desk without sitting down. "I need you to find my brother," she said. No introduction, no pleasantries. No police, no questions. I leaned back in my chair, sizing her up. Her kind always came with baggage the sort that explodes. If you handle it wrong, no questions. I said, "Lady, questions are how I find people." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Just find him. Declan Kane. Last seen at Dive. Anything else you need is on that shard." Kane, the name alone told me this wasn't just another missing person. Inverse Corporation, one of the big ones. Declan Kane wasn't just a scion. He was practically royalty. People like him didn't go missing. They disappeared. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Whatever you think this is, don't. Just find him." And then she was gone, heels clicking against the cracked linoleum dot. I picked up the shard and slotted it into my deck. The screen flared to life, scrolling through files. Declan's profile, last known whereabouts, and a dozen photos of him looking like a poster boy for corporate privilege. What stood out was Dive, a VR club deep in the city's underbelly. A place where people didn't just escape reality, they erased it. The club was a pulsating mess of light and shadow, buried beneath layers of rusted steel and flickering holograms. Inside, the air was thick with the metallic temps of VR rigs. And desperation, people jacked into pods lined the walls, their bodies slack as their minds wandered through synthetic dreamscapes. This wasn't a place for tourists. It was for people who wanted to disappear. I kept my coat tight, the fabric hiding the outdated cybernetics grafted into my arms. No one here respected a relic like me. I slid up to the bar, where a synth bartender polished glasses with mechanical precision. Its faceplate was cracked, revealing the faint glow of circuits beneath. "Declan Kane," I said, sliding a few creds across the counter. "He's been here." The synth hesitated, its servos whining softly. Finally, it nodded toward the back, last pod on the right. "He's a regular." I made my way through the haze, finding the pod still warm. The display on its interface flashed a single word. Idelen. My gut twisted. Idelen wasn't just another VR tag. It was a legend. They crafted dreamscapes that let you live out fantasies no corporate server would touch. Illegal, immersive, and completely untraceable. If Declan had gotten involved with them, he was in deeper trouble than I'd thought. Before I could jack into the pod, I felt the air shift. 2 corp enforcers blocked the exit, their exosuits gleaming like freshly forged steel. The one on the left tilted their head, scanning me with a red visor. "You don't belong here, detective," they said. Voice modulated into a cold monotone. "Walk away." I didn't wait for a second warning. The first plasma shot sizzled past my ear as I dove for cover. Patrons screamed, scattering as the enforcers advanced. My hand found the grip of my old revolver relic, like me, but it got the job done. I fired, shattering the visor of the lead enforcer. Sparks flew as they crumpled to the ground. The other one hesitated, and I used the moment to slip through an emergency exit, disappearing into the maze of alleys that twisted through the city's underbelly. Back in my safe house, I jacked into the grid, tracing Idalin's digital signature. My rig was ancient by modern standards, the kind of gear a corp wouldn't even glance at. But it was mine, and it worked most of the time. The trail led to an abandoned sector of the city's digital underworld, a wasteland of forgotten code and black market hubs. I pushed through firewalls and bypassed traps until I found it. A hidden access point carved into the code like a scar. I hesitated for half a second, then dove in. The space wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. Idalin's avatar stood before me, a shimmering, faceless figure that seemed to shift with every breath of digital wind. Declan Kane, I said. Where is he? Their voice was soft, almost amused. You found me, detective. That's impressive. But finding Declan, that's a different story. They waved a hand, and a fragment of Declan's last session appeared. It played like a memory. Declan confronting his sister in a corporate suite, his face pale with anger. You can't do this, he said. If this gets out, she cut him off. Nothing will get out. You're not just my brother Declan. You're my weakness. And I don't have room for those. The scene dissolved. My stomach churned. The client hadn't hired me to find Declan. She'd hired me to bury him. He came to me for help, Dolan said. But I'm not in the business of saving people. Just preserving their memories. Before I could reply, the space shattered. A virus, black and jagged, tore through the grid. Edelin's form vanished as I yanked myself out of the connection. My head pounding, I stormed into the client's office the next day. Her glass tower overlooked the city like a god surveying its creation. She didn't even flinch when I slammed the memory shard onto her desk. You lied to me, I said. You didn't want me to find him. You wanted to make sure no one else did. She leaned back, her lips curling into a faint smile. And yet, you found the truth. Impressive. But what are you going to do with it? I didn't answer. I'd already uploaded the memory to the public grid. Her empire wouldn't crumble overnight, but the cracks were already forming. She saw it too, her expression hardening as alerts began flooding her desk. You think this will stop me? She said no. I said, turning to leave. But it'll slow you down. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. By the time I stepped onto the street, the rain had started again, washing the city clean. For now, I lit a cigarette, the neon reflections dancing in the puddles at my feet. Justice wasn't real. Not here, but the truth. Sometimes it was enough to shake the foundation's dot, and that was good enough for me.